You know that one person who can say no to anything, skip the family dinner, turn down a favour, leave the group chat on read, and somehow nobody guilts them about it. Then there's you who feel sick to your stomach just thinking about saying no to plans you don't even want to go to in the first place. It's not because they don't love their family as much as you do. It's not because they're colder or more selfish or less considerate. It's because they're immune to a tactic that still works on you every single time: the guilt trip. And there's one sentence that shuts it down on the spot, without a fight, without an apology, without you turning into the bad guy in your own head for the rest of the day. I'll give you the exact line in a minute, but first you need to see the trap clearly, because if you don't recognise it while it's actually happening to you, no sentence in the world will save you. You'll just keep finding new ways to talk yourself out of using it. Guilt tripping doesn't sound like an attack. That's the whole trick to it. If it sounded like an attack, you'd defend yourself instantly. Your brain is wired for that. So instead it sounds like disappointment. Wow, okay, I guess I'm just not a priority. Fine, don't worry about me then. After everything I've done for you. I would have done it for you. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody called you selfish out loud. Nobody technically did anything wrong. But somehow you're the one apologising 30 seconds later for a no that was completely reasonable in the first place. Here's what's actually happening underneath. Guilt trippers aren't trying to understand your reasons. They're not actually interested in why you can't make it or why the boundary exists. They're trying to make staying the easy option and leaving the costly one. So you fold without them ever having to argue the actual point. It's not really a conversation. It's a pressure system, and the pressure is your own guilt, which they didn't even have to manufacture. You did that part for them. And it works, because most people respond to guilt the exact same broken way, by explaining. The second someone looks hurt, the instinct is to reach for more words, more context, more reasons why your no is valid. As if there's some magic combination of sentences that will make them say, oh, okay, that's completely fair, never mind. There isn't. Over-explaining isn't a fix here. It's gasoline. The second you start justifying your no, you've already told them, without meaning to, that the no is negotiable. They just need to find the right angle, the right tone, the right amount of disappointment. You've handed them the instruction manual for how to work you. So if explaining doesn't work, you think the fix is to just stand firm, repeat the no, maybe get a little colder so they finally get the message and stop pushing. In practice, that backfires in two predictable ways, and almost everyone runs into one of them. Way one, you go quiet and stiff. You give one-word answers, you tense up, your tone changes. They read that immediately as guilt is working, because you're acting guilty. So instead of backing off, they push harder, sensing the crack. Way two, you overcorrect in the other direction. You get harsh, maybe a little sarcastic, maybe you snap. And now you've handed them a real legitimate complaint. Except it's not about your boundary anymore, it's about your tone. The entire conversation shifts. Suddenly you're the one apologising for being rude, and the original boundary is completely forgotten. Either way, you've lost the thread, and they've won without ever having to address the actual point. The actual fix isn't louder. It's not colder either. It's one sentence that does something most people never think to do. It names the dynamic out loud, calmly, without accusing anyone of anything. You say it once, you don't repeat it 3 different ways, and you don't negotiate it. That's the whole move. And it works precisely because it doesn't escalate, and it doesn't collapse. Here it is. I can hear you're disappointed, and that's okay. My answer's still no. Say it slow. Say it once. Don't repeat it 3 different ways. Don't add sorry to the front of it. Don't tack a reason onto the end of it. The moment you add a reason, you've reopened the negotiation, because now there's something for them to argue with. Why this exact sentence works? It does 2 things at the same time, and most people only know how to do one of them. It acknowledges their feeling, so they can't turn around and accuse you of not caring, of being cold, of not understanding. And in that same breath, it keeps your decision completely separate from their feeling. You're not arguing that their disappointment is invalid. You're not telling them they shouldn't feel that way. You're just refusing to let their feeling be the deciding vote on your decision. Most people default to one of 2 failed strategies. They either cave to the feeling, fix it, undo the no, smooth it over, or they ignore the feeling completely and come across as cold, which creates a whole new problem. This line does both jobs at once, which is exactly why it doesn't escalate. There's nothing left to push against. You agreed they feel something. You didn't agree to change your answer. Those are 2 separate facts, and you've just made that obvious without saying it directly. So if they keep going after you say it, and the first few times they probably will, because the old version of you always caved eventually, you don't defend the line, and you don't build a new one. You repeat it, word for word, like a broken record. I hear you. My answer's still no. That's the line itself. But the reason it feels almost impossible to actually say the first time you try it isn't about the words, it's about who you're saying it to and what that relationship has trained you to fear. This sentence works differently depending on who's guilt-tripping you, because the relationship changes what you're actually afraid of losing if you hold the line. With a parent, the fear underneath is usually some version of, if I disappoint them, I'm a bad child. Picture the actual moment. You're at a family dinner, you say you can't make it to something next weekend, and you hear, fine, I guess I'll just tell everyone you couldn't be bothered. That line is designed to make you picture yourself as the villain of a story that hasn't even happened yet. The fix is still the same sentence, but you'll likely feel it land in your chest, harder than you expect. That's not a sign you're doing it wrong, that's just decades of conditioning making noise on its way out the door. With a partner, guilt usually shows up disguised as hurt rather than open anger, because anger is too obvious. It sounds like, I just feel like I don't matter to you, dropped right after you said you needed a night to yourself. The same line applies, but it helps to pair it with one small addition. I hear you, and that's okay. My answer's still no. We can talk about how you're feeling separately. That keeps their feeling on the table, validated, without letting it override the actual decision you made. With a friend or a coworker, guilt usually comes with a side of social pressure built in. Other people watching, a group chat. Everyone else is fine with it. Why are you making this difficult? The line doesn't change here either. The audience doesn't get a vote just because there's more than one person in the room. If anything, saying it calmly in front of others does more work than saying it privately, because it shows everyone watching that the pressure tactic didn't land. In every single version of this, whether it's a parent, partner, friend, coworker, even a stranger, the mechanic underneath is identical. Validate the feeling, separate it from the decision, and repeat without ever supplying a new explanation. The relationship changes the flavour of the guilt. It never changes what actually shuts it down. Okay, and what if saying this line still feels almost physically hard, even after hearing exactly? Because somewhere along the way, you learned that someone else's disappointment was your responsibility to fix. Not your fault to cause, your job to resolve on demand, immediately, every time it shows up. So now every time someone's upset near you, some old piece of wiring quietly tells you the upset is a problem, with your name written on it, and the only way to close that ticket is to give in. It doesn't matter whether you actually did anything wrong. The feeling in the room becomes your assignment by default, and you accept the assignment before you've even decided to. That's not weakness, and it's not a character flaw you need to be ashamed of. That's a kid, somewhere back in your history, who figured out that keeping people calm kept things safe. Maybe that's literally true. Maybe a calm house was a safe house. It made sense then. It's costing you now because the adults in your life aren't actually fragile. They can survive your no. They've just gotten used to a version of you who always eventually says yes if they push long enough. Their disappointment is real, but it's also not your assignment. You're allowed to let someone feel something, even feel it big, even feel it loudly, without volunteering to fix it for them. So understand, you don't need a longer explanation. You don't need a better excuse. You need one sentence said once, and the discipline to repeat it instead of negotiate it. The first few times you do this, it will feel awful, your stomach will drop. You'll want to chase it with 3 more sentences to soften it. That feeling isn't proof you're doing it wrong. It's just what it feels like when an old, well-worn manipulation tactic stops working on you for the first time in your life. Strange isn't the same as wrong. So here's the question for the comments. Who's the person in your life this line is for? A parent, a partner, a friend? Tell me below, I read all of them. If this helped, subscribe to Healthy Mind CEO